right, welcome back. You are watching the Wizard Factory podcast for another fresh, hot, tasty episode coming at you. Today, we're going to be tackling sort of a second half or part two, if you will, of this concept of trapped in tunnel vision. So as we sort of introduced last week, this is a dynamic that we see. People are sort of trapped in this one side or another polarized dialectic. And, you know, we introduced the dialectic dynamic in general in the black and white episode recently. And in this one, we're just kind of like taking the magnifying glass into one of the specific topics here. And this is all about having holistic consciousness, right? So we, taking it back, we're looking at, on a fundamental level, our spiritual purpose here as human beings is to expand our consciousness. And what is consciousness if not awareness? So you're not going to be getting the full picture, you're not going to be getting the full gains from leveling up that consciousness if you're only looking at one side of the coin or another. So last week we looked at the sort of love and light aspect, where the New Agers, who tend to sort of, metaphorically bury their head in the sand and just think positive thoughts and think that that's going to be, good, as a one-size-fits-all approach to life. It has its place, of course, and that's really what we're trying to stress here, is that as spoken in the Kabbalion, all truths are but half-truths. So we're not really demonizing any of these things that we're talking about necessarily, is that we're pointing out that you have to caveat and counterbalance these actions or ideals with the other side of the spectrum. And in a lot of ways, this is very much a sort of a masculine and feminine, or left brain, right brain dynamic going on. So just real briefly, for those who are not familiar, the left and right hemispheres of the brain correlate to the yin and yang energies, which are just inherent forces of the universe. They're found in every conceivable thing contains these two, like a battery, positive and negative. It's just everywhere in nature, and so the left and right hemispheres correlate and reflect these. So the right brain would be the feminine side, and if you are in a right brain imbalance where you're using your right side more than your left, you're going to probably fall into that sort of love and light, new agey thing that we looked at last week. So this week is sort of the other side, where you have the doom and gloom. Instead of love and light, you have everything is doom and gloom, right? And and that would be the imbalanced, key word there, masculine. So it's not just saying that masculine is bad or feminine is bad. It's when you have one without the other to counterbalance it, this is what you get is a fear-based mindset. Because think about it, what is the left brain is ruled by the ego, the brain stem, or the R complex of the brain, which is all about survival. And that correlates to sort of that masculine role of being a protector, a provider, one who acquires and maintains resources and things like that. That's a good thing. We're not demonizing that. It's that when you're only seeing everything as a survival situation, and that everything is hostile, and that there's not enough resources, that keeps you in this scarcity mindset, that's a really toxic place to be. And so, that's sort of in a nutshell what we're getting into tonight. So before I ramble on too much more, Brian, do you want to riff on that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks. So essentially, again, we're going to be looking at the doom and gloom side of things. So really looking at, and this is what we refer to as doom and gloom, but the kind of perspective or worldview that everything is just, evil. We're only stuck on this prison planet, like getting, really stuck into the conspiracy mindset of, there's just this evil elite class of people that run the world, and they're just controlling everything, and we have no freedom. And, this whole kind of very just stuck on a very dark or a negative worldview, in the sense, and that's not to say that obviously there aren't those things going on in the world, but we're looking at just only focusing on that and staying stagnant in that mindset, and why that can become toxic and unhealthy.
Right, so, absolutely.
that, that kind of leads into, the first point that we wanted to bring up was really the whole kind of conspiracy mindset. And this is one that a lot of people, in the, the anarchist community or the freedom movement or whatever label you'd like throw on it, have probably not only definitely seen and experienced in others, but have probably experienced themselves. Like when you really first start to go through the awakening process on the, we could say, kind of the political side of things, you start looking at our physical reality field and, how government is, essentially government is slavery. And, there's, groups of people that obviously, are dark occultists, that they very much have the goal of, trying to control human beings and, make them do exactly what they want for their benefit. So we see that, there's obviously a lot of conspiracies out there. And the problem is when people stop using discernment and then they get stuck in this mindset to where they see everything as a conspiracy, or that's all they want to focus on. So where like, even in like any social situation, they find a way. And I know this is something that I struggled with myself, in some of my earlier stages. And I know, Logan, you mentioned that you did as well, that even if it's just like a normal conversation with friends and family, you'll find a way to mix a conspiracy in there. And then people kind of give you a funny look. And on the side of people who are trying to expose conspiracies, there's that kind of that meme that you see around, like, when you start bringing up truth at a party, and then, there's all these people kind of looking at them real funny, and they think it's just because these people are just dumb sheep or they don't want the truth. But that's not really necessarily true. They could just be giving you that look because you're finding a way to make everything just so, the world's just this evil place.
Negative, dark.
Exactly. And after a while, people will only put up with so much of that. So the key with this mindset, or to be able to look at this from a healthy place, a healthy mindset, is to be able to look with discernment and see that, yes, there are conspiracies. There are things that do go on, but not everything is a conspiracy, and using our discernment to figure out what it is, and also recognizing as well that even though there are these things, only focusing on those, or only, putting all your time and attention on those, that's
where obsessive at some point.
Exactly. You can become very, very stagnant. And, I think a lot of that can, and we can hit on this more a little later too, is how a lot of that can come back to a need to want to have that victim mentality.
Right.
Because then it allows you to, put the excuse, and that responsibility outside of yourself that, oh, there's just this evil system and I was born into it and none of it's my fault,
Right. And this is a topic that we kind of actually introduced in the very first episode when we launched our podcast, in the episode entitled Bullies on the Playground, where we're talking about how, this place is a school, a place for learning and advancement, and a playground where literally you can create any, like, dude, how magical is that? You can create anything you want.
Whatever you want.
It's just that the playground has some bullies on it, and they're ruining the fun for everybody else, but only if you let them. And that's the key point that we're getting at here, is staying stuck in the victim mentality of, well, now there's bullies, and you just sit on the monkey bars, and you don't want to play anymore, and you just sit around just stewing about, oh, they just walk around like they own the place and blah blah blah, and you're literally letting them steal your joy and your enjoyment out of life. And in a way, wouldn't that be kind of like letting them win? Even if, you're all about awareness and knowing what's going on in the world, which is extremely important, I mean, invaluable. But if you're allowing them to rob you of your joy in life, I mean, you might as well just roll over and die, because what's the fucking point at that point, Like, and then, like Brian said, this is something that we've both personally been through in the stages of the swinging of the pendulum. I was religious and then very atheist, and then I got into the conspiracies, and it was very dark and negative, and that's when I started kind of swinging into the new age, and then found like the occult and natural law and anarchy and things like that, where you're sort of finally finding your center, but you're still taking pieces and bits of stuff from that journey along with you, what actually has value and continues to serve. So again, we're not demonizing everything about the new age. We're not saying, we're not like totally making fun of conspiratards or whatever they're called, that, you know, some of them are very mock-worthy for sure, but, you know, we can go head-to-head with the best of them talking about conspiracies because we are informed. It's just that we don't live in that place of constantly fixating on what they're doing to us and this victim mentality all the time. You know, they're poisoning us, you know, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and what that brings up for me too is that, you know, when you're staying in this mindset of, you know, you think there's this group of people that are running the world and they have all this power and all this control, it drops you down into a place of fear. So you're stuck in that, you know, that R complex, or, you know, you get stuck into that imbalanced left brain where you're trying to always, you know, discern what is a threat, what's not a threat, how do I stay safe, what is good, what is evil, you know, and you kind of get stuck there. But, you know, like, I think you had a great thing there when you said, you know, don't let them rob you of your joy, you know, because we've talked about before, you know, what happens, you know, with laughter, you pull yourself literally up into your higher brain, you know, and a lot of times with, you know, some of these conspiracies or some of the fear-based mindsets or victim mentalities, once you can actually step back from that and kind of laugh at yourself a little bit, I mean, you know, there's a lot of things that I used to hold as, you know, belief systems that, like, I held as truth, that now as I, you know, kind of speak about them, I can kind of look back and laugh at myself and realize that, no, I was really just kind of unconsciously sabotaging myself because I was allowing me to play the victim and distance the responsibility away from myself and put all the blame out there instead of turning the finger inward and what can I do, where am I on my journey, and how can I come to know thyself deeper.
Exactly. It all has to come back to self-empowerment. If you're so fixated on what they're doing to us, you're forgetting what power you actually have.
Right.
But, you know, an analogy that I like to kind of think about this dynamic to show you that line of balance between the two is, like, say, carrying a weapon on you, for example. So, you know, being somebody who carries a concealed pistol or something like that, for example, that means that you are somebody who understands and accepts that there is evil in the world. You're not a fool, you're not naive, you understand that there are bad people out there with bad intentions. You carry a weapon for your own protection, and you could think of the weapon as sort of a metaphor for knowledge in a way, like arming yourself with the knowledge to navigate through all the bullshit and trickery and booby traps that they have for us. But at the same time, just because you carry that gun doesn't mean you're going around like, oh, there's bad people, and like looking around every single corner, like just waiting for somebody to come and pounce on you. You know, those are two completely different states of mind, and, you know, it's all principle of mentalism is number one there. So
right, absolutely. Yeah, very much so. And the next little thing that, you know, we're wanting to kind of look at here is, you know, this idea, and this kind of can tie in with the conspiracy thing, is this mindset that we're all slaves, or that this planet is just a prison planet, and that, you know, or just that you know, it's just this matrix to keep us trapped in these physical bodies and away from our purest self, or, you know, this whole kind of mindset. And there's a few different places where these mindsets play out, but they all kind of have a same root foundational assumption behind there, and that it's that you're a victim and you're trapped, and that you don't have the, you know, you don't really have the power to be able to change that reality. So the idea that, you know, because there's government and stuff, that we're just all slaves and there's not really anything we can do about it, and we don't really have freedom. Well, that's, you know, that's only a half truth. You know, yes, there is a control system. Yeah, there are a lot of things that you don't really have the freedom to do without a consequence. But at the same time, what always remains? The free will. So just because, and we've mentioned this before, just because there is a potential consequence doesn't mean that you still aren't free to choose, you know. It just comes with a risk. And I mean, that's life. That would be around even if there wasn't a government or a system. If there would still be consequences and potential risk for the choices you make, because that's a universal law. It's built, you know, cause and effect. It's built into the universe. So
right. So, like, you know, I've mentioned this before. I like to look at a prison as a sort of a little microcosm of like environment and how these things can play out, because even in prison, which is the most controlled environment that we know about, that we can possibly create, where there's guards at every corner watching you take a shit, for, you know, God's sake, like, even then they can't keep crime and bad people from doing bad things, or just in general, people from doing what they want. They can smuggle things in, they can get things that they're not supposed to have. So yes, there are police about, yes, they're enforcing laws to some extent, and that is a real thing. But as a half truth, by and large, most of that enslavement and prison and government is all in the mind. And as soon as you make the choice to not live in fear and live your life the way the fuck you want to live it, and not worry about is it legal or whatever, that is where your true freedom and empowerment comes from. Because yeah, you can't just snap your fingers and make the government disappear, but you can choose to live, you know, with empowerment through your day-to-day choices. It's those little choices in life that count and add up the most over time, you know.
Exactly, because we can look and this is a dynamic that we can look at, and we can objectively see that for example, when I woke up this morning, there was still a system out there, and there's still people that pay taxes, and there were still road pirates out there harassing people, but I can also look at the objective fact that when I woke up this morning, I woke up when I chose. I did my ritual whenever I wanted to. I played with my son when I wanted to. There's all these free will choices that we've made, and no one's stopping you from those. So to say that you're just a total slave and, to only stay stuck in that mindset that this is just a prison and this life is so horrible, that's a very negative place to be. That's not to, again, we're not saying don't acknowledge those things, but also recognize that you have the free will decision to be able to live fearlessly as a spiritual warrior, as we've talked about, even if that involves potential consequences, those consequences being that government may, for example, I've, been disobeying, my fair share for more than a few years now. And, when I was in California, I was running my grow out there and everything. And yeah, I had the cops show up with MRAPs and, probably 30 of them, and they, pointed guns at me and raided me. And yep, I've had those consequences play out, but I'm still here and I'm still disobeying. And, it doesn't mean that one event won't happen to you or that lots of things won't happen to you, but still in every moment, in that present moment, stay there and choose whether or not you're going to obey out of fear or you're going to live fearlessly with your free will and choose to disobey.
Right, absolutely. So what we're really stressing here is, be aware of what's going on in the world. Be informed by all means. That knowledge is power, but make your focus on what can you actually do in your own life. What freedoms do you have that you can take on a day-to-day basis? For example, you could choose to click the thumbs up button and help our channel grow, and that would really help us out and spread the message of freedom. So don't be a victim. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel.
Right, exactly.
So, and then, another thing that's kind of plays into here is, and again, something that I've definitely been guilty of to some degree throughout my journey, which I'm not currently, stuck in this place anymore, is just viewing everything like entertainment-wise, movies, TV shows, even football, for example. I'm not a sports fan, but, there's definitely this big stigma of, sports ball and statism because of the Roman Colosseum and all this kind of stuff. And, yes, there's some truth to that, but at the same time, it's just a game. It's just entertainment. You're allowed to have fun. You're allowed to enjoy and just be dumb once in a while and just turn your brain off and, kick back and enjoy, like, with hanging with your friends and family or whatever. And, that sort of thing. This idea that it's all mind control and it's all like satanic and, because Hollywood is dark. And yes, I mean, there's definitely subliminal messages in movies. And guess what? The more that you study the symbolism and things like that, the more immune you are to it. And you can actually get joy out of picking that stuff apart and getting the rich allegory. That there's so many beautiful stories in movies that, like V for Vendetta or Cloud Atlas or The Matrix or, movies like that actually are very rich with spiritual, philosophical knowledge that you can get. And, remember that learning, and when it comes to like programming, is reached through your subconscious mind. So me just, somebody just telling you the truth or just giving you some advice or whatever, that's going to really go through the filter of your left brain and your ego and all your belief system and everything like that. But when you watch it through allegory, when there's a story playing out and you have an emotional connection to the characters, that's the feminine side of the brain. You know, you're connecting it. It makes you feel things, you know, and you're seeing it in action rather than just being told a theory or something. You're going to learn those lessons a lot more deeply. This is why they use fairy tales and fables to teach children, because children are just wide open and very susceptible to suggestion and things like that. So, you know, Brian, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, definitely. You know, like as you said, this was something that, you know, we both struggled with ourselves. That at one point, you know, I was very much in the mindset that, you know, any kind of like really like, and not all out, but, you know, that most of the movies, you know, coming out of Hollywood are all mind control, or that, you know, music, and just kind of getting myself to a place where I, you know, again, I was stuck in this doom and gloom mindset, and I was really robbing myself of joy. And, you know, this is something that as I've, you know, worked with Venus, and, you know, some more of that goddess energy I've been working through, and that I'll touch on that more later in the talk here.
You've been playing with your Venus again, Brian?
Right, yeah. Yeah, you know, that was something that I realized that, you know, especially as I was studying astrology, that it's not just, you know, the things in this material world, this body, they're not just these evil things, that it's totally okay to enjoy the pleasurable things in life. So if you want to go watch a movie, don't beat yourself up over it. Just go enjoy the fucking movie. You know,
right.
You don't have to just constantly be, you know, or, you know, and this was one that I used to do a lot, that, you know, if I saw other people doing it, like, oh, that's just mind control, you're just, you know, dumb sheep or whatever. Well, that just kind of makes people think you're an asshole. And then they realize that you're stuck in this state of being angry all the time, and you've just forgotten how to have fun and how to have joy. And,
right.
You know, laughter and joy, those are, you know, some of the purest and most wonderful states of being that we could experience here. So to rob yourself of that, like you said earlier, that's really just letting them win. You know, you're letting them keep you in a state of mind where you're disempowered and you're
in fear.
Well, and
the entire system runs on fear, and you're just playing right into that.
Yeah, and it keeps you in that state of, you're either thinking about the things that happened in the past, what the government's done, or what they're going to do, and you're robbing yourself of that present, of that now. You know, that's another thing that brought up for me there.
Yeah. If anything, I could, you know, maybe balance this and caveat this a bit, is I definitely think a lot of the very mainstream popular music, you know, pop, country, and rap, the you know, top 40 stuff, is inherently very toxic. I think that music has been weaponized to a point that, I mean, there's all these hidden frequencies and subliminal messaging and stuff that even if you're hip to it, like, I can hear it happening, and still after a few songs, I literally feel physically ill, and I'm like, I got to get away from this shit. Like, you know, that's one thing where I literally can't, you know, I can't even tolerate it. But not every movie is like that, is what we're, you know, like, for example, TV shows on Netflix, you know, like Dexter or something like that, you know, really good stuff.
But, you know, with country music, if you play the song backwards, they get all their shit back.
And their dog comes back to life. Zombie dog. Zombie dog.
The next little kind of couple ideas we wanted to hit on here, and this one that we you know, we've talked about recently before, so we won't spend too much time on it here. But the idea of money, you know, and we've talked about this idea before, where a lot of people will take kind of this doom and gloom stance on money, that it's all satanic, or it's all, you know, it's only mind control, or it's only evil, and, you know, it's just inherently flawed or inherently evil to, you know, go after money or to charge for services or whatever that may be. And, you know, we just want to bring it up, not so much to get in money's discussion, but just looking at that mindset of just only looking at something as kind of from this doom and gloom perspective. You know, on the flip side, we could kind of look at it where people, you know, they demonize, you know, guns or whatever, or the weapon themselves, when it's just a tool. But then they're saying, oh, that's all inherently evil, or, you know, and it's just staying stuck in, you know, on one side of this without being able to look at the other side and then find the balance in between.
Right.
But then another side that kind of leads into is this idea of minimalism. So a lot of people that may take this idea that money's all evil may then, as out of a reaction to that, try to go to where they're living a minimalist lifestyle. And,
Hmm.
again, I was when I did my kind of hero's journey and went to find myself, I backpacked around. So I definitely lived this lifestyle for a while and very much enjoy it. It's very useful and there's nothing wrong with it. But the idea that you have to be a minimalist in order to be a spiritual person or something like that, again, nothing wrong if that's what you choose to do. But at the same time, if people don't want to choose that, that doesn't mean that they are, satanic or evil or, whatever that may be.
Right. You can kind of see in fact how this exact thing is polarizing people to one extreme or the other, where, you got your preppers that are like so concerned with the shit hitting the fan that they're, stocking up and on canned food and water and
Stuff
bullets
in the
and
future.
and yeah, and again, there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but that it's that imbalance. Whereas on the other side of things, it's like, okay, now you're woke, you drink your Coca-Cola and you see that the Federal Reserve is a big, Ponzi scheme or whatever, and now you just think all money is evil and we just need to, like, live in poverty and just, like, deal with the currency of love is the only one that matters. And again, we're not discounting that. You can be spiritually and emotionally abundant as well as physically. Those two don't have to be mutually independent of each other
Exactly.
necessarily. That's just a false black and white dialectic way of looking at it.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
like, another thing, that Brian and I discussed here is, you can observe. I've literally heard this said quite a few times, on Facebook and things like that, where, like, everything we've ever been taught is a lie. It's such that like extremist absolute. We talked in the black and white episode about absolutism, and that's what trauma does to the ego. Is it deals in absolutes, and it's like it's either all or nothing, and there's no in between. Like, it's all dark sided, it's all evil, it's all out to get us, and everything we've been told is a lie.
Yeah.
you know it's just it's extreme is what it is.
Right.
Yes, we've been lied to about a very great many things, and especially things that are just generally sort of accepted as normal in mainstream society, like, the government is good and circumcision is healthy, and just things like that are normalized. But like, just think about that, for example. How stupid do you think people are if like, if they literally lied about everything, we would figure it out. The reason that the system works is because they find that perfect balance between lies and truth. Like, look at the media, for example. Usually there's a little grain of truth to the stories that they're pushing. They spin it to their agenda, and yes, they do completely fabricate some of their stories completely just from scratch, but a lot of them, they take that little bit of truth and then they spin it and twist it to their agenda. But that doesn't mean everything's totally a lie. That's why you have to be able to have your own ability to discern truth from, falsehood, and make your own decisions about. No one else can tell you what's real better than you can.
Mhm.
Trusting somebody else is the same as, like, Christianity is just putting all your faith in a book. Like, this is the end all be all of truth. All I need to do is believe everything in this book and I'll be fine. Or atheists do the same thing with science. Well, we know the Bible's bullshit, but these guys in white lab coats look super legit, so let's just trust everything that they have to say, even though the scientific method has been so ridiculously bastardized in the mainstream, communities and everything like that. Everybody wants to be kind of just spoon-fed, told what to believe, told what the truth is, rather than actually thinking for themselves and making up their own damn mind and having original thought about it. Bit of
Right.
a rant there, but I just, that's a perfect example of those absolutist statements that get thrown around, all over the place, and people just don't really seem to be thinking about what they're actually saying. Like, you really hear yourself talking when you say that. It's absurd.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's again just taking that wounded ego coming from a place of trauma. When they wake up to some of these things that they see that they're obviously
Hmm.
really evil and they're horrible going on. So then they feel like everything they were ever taught was a lie. But when you can kind of step back from that knee jerk reaction or that traumatized reaction and start really questioning that and breaking it down, you can see that's not really totally true.
Right. And so, just to throw out another example to further, drive the point home, is like, say, if somebody has a wounded ego, they have a wounded sense of self. They were probably, really like emotionally abused when they were young or whatever, and then they make a mistake, and rather than saying, "Oh man, I fucked up," what do they say? I just suck. I'm just a failure. See that they're jumping from the, oh, I made a mistake. Yes, let's acknowledge that. They jump all the way past that to the most
I'm a
farthest
total fuck
extreme of
up,
just like,
and
I'm a total failure. I don't know why I bother. It's this, oh, poor me, I'm such a victim. Like, I can't do anything right kind of thing. That would just be one of many examples that this kind of can manifest. So.
right. And the next little thing that, we kind of wanted to look at here, and this is a subject that we touch on and hit on a lot, and eventually we're going to be doing a lot more in depth on, we'll be making a whole documentary just on the subject, but this is, Christianity. And, how, over the last 2,000 years, monotheism and the specific, especially here in the West, and in the United States, the Christian mindset of the Abrahamic traditions is the one that's been very heavily promoted and has seeped into all the deepest corners of our society. So a lot of people, have mindsets or belief systems that are, even if they're not necessarily Christian, those actually have their roots in
Or they think that they're not religious, or they think that they know that religion's bullshit, yet they're still subscribing to.
Right. So, and this idea would be, the idea of original sin in Christianity very much fits into this doom and gloom mindset. This idea that we're all just inherently evil, we're all inherently sinners, we'll never be good enough, and that, the earth is just the devil's playground where you have to be tested in this physical body, and it's only until you get to heaven then things will get better. But this place is just kind of here as a test ground or a punishment for the devil to be able to run around. And again, I like to look at sin as self-imposed negativity, because that's a mindset that you have to use your free will choice to accept. And whenever you accept that mindset, you're imposing that negativity on yourself. But that idea that all human beings are just sinful or evil right off the bat, I mean, like, as a parent,
because of what a few evil fucks are doing somewhere else in the world.
Right. Well, and as a parent, this, it was one of the thoughts that when I first had my son, I was first looking at him, it just hit me really hard. I was like, how could anyone look at like their innocent child, like in their arms, and just think that just because they're born, they're inherently flawed and evil. Like, what a disempowered mindset. It's a very doom and gloom mindset that, everybody's just inherently a sinner, inherently evil. And the only way, this little baby's ever going to be good enough is if it accepts some blood sacrifice that happened a long time ago, and, so on and so forth. And, this is a huge subject into itself. Again, like I said, we're going to be doing a very extensive, in-depth documentary series just on the subject. So we won't delve too deeply into it, but just that idea of original sin. And then we can kind of take that and carry it over to, where, say, people maybe go to the atheist mindset. And a lot of them will take the mindset that you hear this a lot of the times, human beings are a virus. Very similar. Oh, all human beings are evil, all human beings are sinful, human beings are a virus. Two statements, but very much saying the same thing, even though they're coming from people who are supposedly
opposite
different belief systems.
Right. Exactly. It's all misanthropic. This is the word misanthropic, is where you have a inherent self-loathing extended out towards the whole human species. Right. And again, it's like they're just seeing the evil that's going on in the world just because they're, quote unquote, running the world. It's all you could see. It's so big in your vision that you just assume the whole world is like that. And that, and that's the story that the news is selling, that everyone is evil and it's a scary place and people are losing their minds and punching Nazis and all this crazy stuff. It's just this chaos out there that and a lot of conspiracy people, tend to be Christians because they're like, well, the devil's real and we got it, and then like they're looking into, the proof, their confirmation bias that the devil is real and that the world is just the devil's playground, and that their faith in God is the only thing, insulating them from that evil, and that it's not so much about them taking action to actually fix it, as long as they can just hold out long enough till the rapture comes and Jesus is going to come down in his chariot and swoop us all away and take us to heaven because we're good believers and we're obedient. And that's just the very disempowered and
Right.
anti-sovereignty
And
mindset.
the next one I was wanting to hit on with this here that can also tie in is this idea that we talked about a little bit in the beginning, that this, we're stuck or we're trapped in a matrix, or we've been put in these physical bodies as a way of, just staying trapped so other beings can, just siphon all of our energy and things like that. That's also a very, I would say, doom and gloom mindset to have. It's a very unhealthy or a toxic worldview to think that this place is in, I mean, to me, especially being, a pagan and having great respect for Mother Earth and that mother goddess and archetype, what a disrespectful mindset to take towards, Mother Earth. I mean, think about just the utter fucking miracle that we're these fleshy beings living on a spinning rock, out in the galaxy, and yet the perfect conditions for us to exist are here. We have all the things that we need, but yet we're going to act like we're just victims and we're trapped. Like, Mother, this is just a prison and I'm stuck here. We were talking the other day, I used the example of like a toddler, when they're throwing a fit and they like go to the corner and they'll just like turn purple and scream at the top of their lungs, but they're only over there because they're throwing a fit. No one's making them stay there. Like, they're just there because of their choice and they're upset.
Right.
But as soon as they stop doing that, they can pull themselves out of that corner. Well, that's kind of what we see here is with this victim mindset that, you're feeling like you're in this physical body, or, humans are a virus. So, and this is another phrase we hear a lot. I don't want to be one of them. I just don't want to.
I don't want. There's that meme that said, "I don't want to live on this planet anymore." That was
right. Or people want to identify with fucking aliens or whatever the fuck it is, because they have such a negative worldview of their own species, and just of this planet. And again, why look at Mother Earth being here as a prison or a punishment when it really is such an absolutely amazing gift and opportunity that we as infinite consciousness have been able to come here to limit ourselves into this physical body in order to have this experience, to do the alchemical work, and to be able to have all these experiences and learn all these lessons and raise our awareness, our consciousness, and at the same time that of the universe around us. I mean, very disrespectful to kind of stay, just of that gift, that opportunity to just stay in that victim mindset all the time.
Right, absolutely. And the second point that I was going to bring up when, I said, first of all, truthers tend to be a lot of the time, not always, but there's a lot of Christian truthers. There's a lot of overlap with that. But they also tend to still be very minarchist, where they believe in the values of like what the country was founded in God we trust, that sort of thing, like one nation under God. Well, sure, the government's bad, but we just need a clean house. And, that's where Trump, drain the swamp. This idea of like minarchy is like, we need government to keep the government at bay. It's this totally crazy,
the federally protected swampland.
Backwards. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and so another example of like where we said everything we've been taught is a lie, areas you see this kind of thing showing up is like people that believe that Hitler was actually the good guy. He didn't kill anyone. He was actually trying to save the world from the Jews, that every person that every person in Hollywood and music and entertainment are all transgenders. Like if they're a man, they were born a woman, and vice versa, or else they don't get to be on the world stage or something. Like and don't get me wrong, I definitely think there are probably a lot more trannies than, sorry if that's not a PC word, transgender people that I'm not trying to disrespect transgenders. Anyways, I'm simply pointing out that there are people that just there's that obsessive, word again, where they post pictures of like, funny angles and like looking at the bone structure, and they post this stuff nonstop. They're obsessed with like exposing all the transgenders in Hollywood and stuff. And I just, that's such a waste of energy, in my opinion. Like, are you really making the world a better place with all that? Like, wouldn't you be better off like going and growing some vegetables in your garden or something? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is something, that, we hit on a little bit before too, but, this whole, humans are a virus mindset, or I don't want to be part of them,
Hmm.
they're all dumb sheep. But whenever you kind of get into that mindset and you accept that worldview as like a foundational, because remember, taking back to the Trevian process, everything's built off that foundational knowledge, assumption, belief system.
Mentalism.
Exactly. It starts from that state of mind. So when you're accepting that as a foundational state of mind, that you're putting everything else through the filter of that, you rob yourself of that ability to really have joy. And I noticed this in myself. So again, don't think
Mm.
that we're just pointing these things out from behavior we've seen in others. These are things that we've experienced ourselves, and they were hangups that we had to work through. Because I noticed when I stayed stuck in that mindset, not only did I act like a total asshole towards everybody, but I robbed myself of my joy, and I was robbing other people of joy around me because I was just being such a buzzkill.
Projecting.
Yeah, projecting my own fear and insecurities of feeling like a victim, because you find out there's the system, and then all of a sudden you feel so powerless. You're like, I was lied to my whole life. There's the system that's keeping me under control, and it makes you traumatized to recognize, the
Hmm.
first stage of the alchemical process is the blackening. And, that's a very dark phase to go through. But the
Mm.
key is to not, and this is another point that we had, is to not stay in the anger of that awakening. That, yes, it's totally normal to have that as a stage, to recognize that, to feel those emotions. But
Mm.
emotions are energy in motion. We need to allow them to be felt,
Hmm.
expressed, and then moved on. But if you're staying stagnant in one, you've got yourself stuck. And again, we talked about this in nature. Stagnation is death. So
Right.
if you're staying emotionally stagnant, you're really killing yourself emotionally and spiritually, psychologically, and you're going to continue to suppress those things, further and further, into the subconscious and then into the unconscious. And before you know it, you're going to open up that ghost door, that feedback loop in the unconscious realm that, we've talked about, which if you haven't seen our episodes on that, go check that out. We talked, I think one was chasing the tail dogma and the other one was called the unconscious feedback loop. But we
Mm.
go through Norse mythology, and this is also seen in the Taoist mythology with the Bagua, or the eight gates, that between the southwest and the northeast, there's this ghost door. And when there's unconscious trauma there, it opens up that ghost door for your demons to be able to move into your belief system. And then they then infect the ego, the subconscious mind, the actions feed into the unconscious. And it just creates this feedback
Mhm.
loop that people can become stuck in.
And there you see, and if you're familiar with this concept which you introduce, you see that it does affect your ability to relate to other people, which is the
Right.
world of the West. There, it's a perfect example right there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you mentioned the anger thing, what that brought up for me is how that's another perfect example of the way in which we're being manipulated through these dialectics, where people are being polarized to one or the other. So again, last week we talked about anger in our Love and Light episode, but in that context, what do the followers of the New Age ideologies say? That anger is a negative emotion, that you shouldn't feel it. Therefore, they're doing what's known as spiritual bypassing, where they're actually not allowing themselves to feel the negative emotions at all, and they're actually suppressing them. And we talked about how, like, bottling up your emotions is like shaking a Coke bottle, and that's why you walk around on a hair trigger there. But then in this context, you can see the sort of the other side of it, where instead of suppressing it, you're feeling it all the time, and you're actually just staying stuck there, and you're not allowing it to flow. So both are different forms of stagnation. So
Mm-hmm.
the goal here, what the bullseye of how to manage your emotions, especially the difficult ones, the challenging ones, is to feel them, and feel them fully and deeply, and really just completely sort of surrender to them, I guess is a good word. Because it's like clinging to a live wire. It's burning the shit out of you, but it's actually your own muscles that are clinging to it, right? So in both ways, you want to feel them fully, but then let them go and release that, and just move the fuck on with it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of the two sides of that there.
Right, because when we stay stuck in this doom and gloom mindset. A lot of times when we're operating from a place like this, we've mentioned, we forget to see the happiness in the world, but what they really forget to do is you forget to look at and see all the joy, all the good things going on in the world. Like, I mean, I've seen so many beautiful things in my life, from, up in the Rocky Mountains or seeing the redwoods. I mean, I've experienced so many wonderful things, the smile on my son's face every day, the fact that every moment I get to breathe in and be inspired. So right now, if you feel like you're stuck in a doom and gloom mindset, stuck in conspiracy, take a fucking second. Breathe in. And if you can do that, there's something to be joyful about. There's something to be happy about.
Right.
That's a beautiful.
You're alive.
You can be inspired. Exactly. So make sure you don't get stuck to where you're cutting yourself off from all the joy, or you're forgetting to look at all the good in the world. Because there's some really shitty people out there doing really absolutely fucking disgusting, horrible things in the world. But there's also people out there that are doing really wonderful, amazing, truly heart-based things.
Great acts of kindness and generosity and it's, community and people supporting each other. There's so much good in this world, man.
Right. So it's not just this black and white thing. Both exist. To tie back to our other episode.
It's all here on planet Earth. It's just this one little blue marble. This has blown my mind before just thinking about this, but like, think of literally anything you can think of, just random, like some restaurant you've been at, somebody you once knew, windsurfing, skydiving, just whatever, everything that you can possibly think of has transpired and is happening all on this one place we call Earth together. You look at the moon, dude, that's the same moon that Shakespeare looked at and wrote his plays and stuff. I mean, like, how cool is that? Like, this is just this tiny little speck, in this grand scheme of things. But look what great and terrible things that we've accomplished and have transpired here. So, and that's, this is something I really wanted to convey in the artwork that I created for both of these episodes where, last week, if you see, it's this lady meditating and she's got all these zombies coming up behind her. So it's almost like she thinks that if she just meditates and thinks happy thoughts, that all that evil is just going to go away. In fact, she's leaving herself totally vulnerable, in that situation. On the flip side, if you look at the, the artwork for this one, it's, this guy who's in an absolute utopian paradise. There's flowers and rays of sunshine and it just lush beauty all around him, but he's so stuck in his fear-based mindset that he's just like living in that fear. I think that really like conveys what we're getting at here pretty perfectly, if I do
and
say
again,
so.
It comes back down to sovereignty and free will, that you have the ability to make choices, to put a cause out in the universe that will have an effect. So what choices are you going to make? Since the potential for both is there, you as the individual have the right and all the power to be able to take choices and actions to create as much of that reality as you want. And how much effort and willpower that you have behind that determines how successful you're going to be.
Right. Very good point. Yeah, because, it's just as much about holistic consciousness and seeing the world for what it truly is and exactly as it is, but yet also knowing that you always have the power within you to be the change that you want to see, to create the world that you desire to live in, one day at a time and one action at a time. You're balancing those two things too. See the world as it is, but make the world as you wish it to be,
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. And another big one that we can see this play out with is the idea of nationalism. Where a lot of people with nationalism will take this stance that anybody who's not a member of my country, or anybody big one in America, obviously not so much in the rest of the world, but anybody outside of my country, they must not be free, or they just must not be as good as us. And there's kind of this doom and gloom perspective that they take on the rest of the world, but not on their own country. So that, I think that's kind of an interesting little thing to observe. Would you like to kind of riff on that for a minute, Logan?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is one of those things that I thought of after we did our black and white episode, and I was like, oh man, I wish we had a got that one in there because that's such a perfect, example of this. Again, taking it back to what it really means is absolutism, and just think about the sort of blanket statements that get made about nationalism and different countries, like we kicked their ass, or, Germany attacked, Poland or whatever. Germany, I'm pretty sure the mountains didn't reach up and smack Poland. Like, Germany, what is Germany? You're talking about a whole group of people on a arbitrarily designated group, a portion of the earth here. Not, it's collectivism, really, if you want to look at it that way. So like, they hate us for our freedoms is a big one. Well, they hate the government, or they hate me because I'm not America, and I don't support the government, and the government sure as hell doesn't represent me. So to just put us all under this blanket term of America, that's just fallacious thinking, and that's the kind of stuff that needs to absolutely, be done away with. But in context of this talk, you can definitely see how that's being used to manipulate us, where the news is constantly talking about what the other scary countries or even religions, Islam did this and China did that and Russia did that. Yeah, Russia. And it's all just this fear mongering of you're fearing other people that are just humans like you and me. Most people are good. Most people just want to have abundance of family, friends, and wealth and joy and things like that. Like, we're not all that different as the rulers, so to speak, would want us to believe. And so we need to be able to see through these bullshit facades and veils of illusion that they're trying to keep over our eyes to keep us fighting each other instead of the real enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent points.
We are humanity, and they are anti-humanity. Like, everything they are is anti-human. So why are we going to fight our fellow human beings for those people that are so psychopathic? They are like reptilians. I'm not saying
they're interspecies predators.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about before. They're an interspecies predator. So why would you play into their hands with that mindset? And this next one is another subject that obviously is been used as a massive tool for manipulation and polarizing people to different sides, and that's the idea of climate change and global warming and these things. This is a big subject here that we've seen a lot of people again, and this ties back into the black and white episode, where people will take just a very extreme stance on one side or the other. They either don't believe in it at all, or they believe in it totally, and the world's going to end in 10 or 12 years, or just a very extreme kind of alarmist mindset, when we can see that it's both. That obviously there are some major issues on our planet, the amount of trash we're putting to the ocean, the way we're using monoculture to destroy our soil, the way we're utilizing water and resources are absolutely out of alignment with cosmic law, and are causing a huge amount of harm, not only to the planet but to the plant and animal life on it. But at the same time, it isn't just to the total extreme that a lot of the UN scientists, or a lot of the people we can see on the far left here, will get very kind to the point of psychosis almost about it if you disagree with them on it,
right?
About anything. Yep. And it's just this absolutist statement on either side, where if you can look, you can see the evidence that, like, yes, there's a lot of harm being caused, but we could also look and see that Earth goes through very natural planetary cycles, that there are ice ages and warm ages, and there are shifts between those, and that we're going through one of these at this time. And we can look back through the geological record at the evidence, and objectively observe and look at this. So, to understand, to not take a total mindset, and again, tying more in with this episode of the doom and gloom mindset, the idea that, it's all just, the whole planet's fucked and it's just going to be totally destroyed, and there's not anything we can do to fix it, and things like that. That's a very kind of doom and gloom world view, and you see that being played on, especially by the political left, as a way of keeping people in fear. Like, obviously we had like AOC with her new Green Deal that was coming out, and this it's just another form of mind control. It's a way of a perfect example of a Hegelian dialectic. They're creating a problem, or a perceived problem, which will then garner a reaction and then they will step in with their solution, which is really just them pushing people the way they want them to go.
Right.
So be vigilant,
Agenda
do your own
21,
research,
things like that.
use discernment, and, then find out where you need to stance. You don't need to just take an immediate stance on something. It's okay to say, I'm not sure yet. I would like to look at more evidence. I'd like to do more research.
Right. Yeah, and man, this hit me pretty hard, just now, is looking at this from a sort of another dichotomy dialectic, where climate change is sort of like a very liberal left, aspect, and then eugenics is a very kind of like Nazism, right leaning thing. But those two things are used in tandem with a very similar agenda. And in a way, it's like political original sin, where it's still fueling that misanthropic, human-hating mindset that we're just a virus. We're destroying the planet. There's too many.
Overpopulation.
Overpopulation.
Perfect.
There's too many of us.
Yeah.
Is just feeding right into that agenda, because they do want to reduce the population. They do want to move us. Study Agenda 21. This really something that needs to be being brought into everyone's awareness of like what the sort of aspect of the global agenda is that they're using climate change and things like weather manipulation to actually herd people in droves, in mass, out of and into different geographic locations. And they eventually want to have everybody in these very isolated human only zones, and everything else is like no man's land. And it's these ecological, that's a bit off topic, but I'm just touching on that. But I just wanted to point out that dichotomy of climate change, global warming, and eugenics, left and right, serving the same exact agenda. And the left and right is just an illusion. They're all in it together. It's like the WWE guys that act like they're ripping each other's faces off, and then they're backstage having a beer and having a laugh, because they're all playing the same game.
Right. Yeah, and this, another one we can look at here, and this is one that we kind of hit on last week with the whole New Age love and light. It's the worldview of looking at negative or difficult emotions as negative, where that's really that sets you up for a pretty doom and gloom worldview. Because if you want to be realistic with yourself, you're going to be experiencing those sometimes. So if you think that you're a human being, and then there's this range of emotions and you've demonized half of them, you're really setting yourself up for a place that every single time you're feeling one of those, you're then going to feel worse about yourself, because then you're thinking, oh, I'm not staying in love and light. I'm stuck in a lower vibration, or I'm stuck in a lower state of consciousness because I'm feeling sadness or anger, or whatever that may be. And then it's this vicious cycle, and then these things, and then out of that, they try to suppress it more, and then it gets into the subconscious and the unconscious, and then it only guarantees that it will manifest more. So, you're really setting yourself up for a worldview that will only become, darker and darker, because you're looking at those that way. Whereas if you can look at them from the empowered mindset that these are just emotions, these are a human experience that we have, and that anger and sadness are just as important as, happiness and joy. There's a really great kids movie out there called Inside Out that if people haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. But that was really one of the main lessons in the movie, that, there's as a short summary, the whole movie takes place in like this little girl's head, and each one of the emotions is different characters. So there's joy and anger and sadness and all these different ones. And, sadness throughout the movie is kind of touching some of these little balls that contain memories, and turning them to where those memories are becoming sad. And all the other emotions, especially joy, is kind of getting, frustrated with her. They don't really understand the point of sadness. Why is she here? She's always just kind of bumming things out. But then later on, there's a character in the movie that, he's experiencing some of that, and joy tries to cheer him up, but then sadness just comes and sits with him and is like, oh, I bet you do miss that. I bet that was really sad. And then all of a sudden, Joy understood that, that's why that was there, because that was an emotion that was just as important as joy, and she needed to be there. So great little movie that, very much gets at what we're talking at here in this specific point. So recommend people go check that out for sure.
Right on. Yeah, and I mean, like, really think about what is the purpose of our emotions as well. Is the point of life just to be happy all the time, or is it to learn those hard lessons and have, experience what they call growing pains? There's a reason
Hmm.
growing pains is it's uncomfortable because you're pushing outside the limits of your comfort zone. And really, what are negative emotions there for but to tell you that there's something wrong? So how are you ever going to fix the problems of the world if your emotional compass is not telling you, giving that red buzzer saying like something's very wrong here? You should feel angry when you see those police brutality videos, and you should feel sad when they're shooting people's dogs and you hear them crying and stuff like that. I mean, that's horrible. But guess what? Emotion creates motion. What you care about is what moves you and motivates you to take action. So
Right.
by only seeking joy in life, you're sort of actually being very lazy and irresponsible, because you need to feel connected to humanity as a whole. Yes, see to your own needs and protect your own individual rights, but also realize that we're a human family and we're very much all in this together. And I think that, I mean, if we could just master that one thing and really truly understand it and live it, I mean, think about how much better the world would be if we were all sticking up for each other and, cooperating and joining forces instead of being what we are now, just fighting each other over the dumbest shit.
Mhm. Absolutely. And from the, from the magical perspective here, because we obviously like to bring this up at the Wizard Factory, some
Yeah,
of those, emotions that you may consider darker, like anger or deep depression or whatever those may be, those carry a very intense and very powerful charge to them that when you can become aware of it, allow yourself to experience that, you can then utilize that charge for your magical workings, for your manifestation that you're wanting to create. I mean, as a person, in the Vedic tradition, I'm a Pisces ascendant, and my moon sits in the eighth house. And in the Western, I'm a quadruple Scorpio. So emotions and kind of digging into the deeper, darker things of life that are really intense. That's something that my mind spends a lot of time at. But that also gives me so much access and ability to bring into my magical practice and what I'm wanting to create. That's something that I absolutely utilize and tap into. So why would you cut yourself off from that charge?
absolutely. Yeah, man. Um, so yeah, like, this is another big one that, again, I definitely experienced firsthand, and Brian, you might have as well, is this concept that the occult is evil and scary, and it's dark-sided. Part of my awakening, you see, for me personally, I'll just take it back to anecdotally. I first learned about 9/11 and the Federal Reserve scam, and, like, microchip, RFID, mark of the beast kind of stuff. And then, that was my first red pill. And then as I started looking into it, I got into guys like Jordan Maxwell and things like that. And, I don't know necessarily that this was Jordan Maxwell's intention, or Michael Tessarian, or any of those guys, but when you start studying this symbolism, oftentimes they only talk about what the dark occultists are doing, but they're not so much talking about the occult itself, or all of the profound, deep spiritual wisdom that it contains, in the empowering knowledge that it contains too. Because look, here's the bottom line, man. The people that run this the power structures, the control system, are dark occultists, right? They have this hidden knowledge of the dynamics and the laws of nature that are knowable by anyone, but they're not easily seen, but are discoverable. And it's pertaining to the way that the universe works and the way the human mind works. And this is why they are so powerful in their way. It's why they're able to manipulate people so easily, is because they know us inside and out. And taking it back to know thyself, they know us way better than we know ourselves as a whole in the aggregate. That's a generalized statement there. Most people haven't the slightest clue about how their own psychology works, how the trivium. I mean, just these basic things that are so fundamental to living an empowered life and to creating the life that you want, essentially. And, and so like I went through that whole thing where anytime I saw the all-seeing eye, I was like, oh, it's satanic, it's dark-sided, and then, that's just a very childish and fear-based mindset. I now realize, now that I've actually looked into it for myself. But just to throw this out there, consider that if they are using this secret knowledge to create this power differential, think of, two fighters. One has been studying the art of boxing for 40 years, and the other guy's just like, oh, I'm just going to punch him real hard in the face, right? Who do you think's going to win that? Even if the other guy was super ripped, right, and the other guy's all scrawny and stuff, that knowledge is going to win out most of the time. So what better way to deter the masses from looking into it, but by convincing them that it's evil, or that it's either hocus pocus, or that it's inherently bad. And so they're either going to just say, oh, that's just a bunch of nonsense, that's just like, some crazy people or whatever, or by thinking, oh, God doesn't want us to do that, that's sorcery, that's tampering with, the devil and demons and all this kind of stuff, which there is an aspect to the occult that deals with, invoking spirits and things like that. But that's a small sliver of the entire pie of what the occult actually is. It does not represent it by any means.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That's one we definitely see a lot of people, especially very early in their stages, that they very much will go through that. And like, they see the all-seeing eye, or they'll see, something like this and then think it's all satanic, when, originally this is a pagan hand gesture, or mudra for warding off evil, where a lot of people think that's invoking Satan, and it's the exact opposite. You're grounding the energy down. So yeah, it's just like the Uruj rune, exactly. So which is, the Uruj rune represents the wild ox, the bull, and that strength. And what does a bull do whenever it is going after somebody to protect itself? But it turns its horns down.
Because it's
so
charging,
very pagan thing, but a lot of people will take it, especially, and again, this kind of ties back in when we talk about a lot of the people coming to the truth movement or getting stuck in conspiracy theories are coming from a Christian background. So anything that they aren't familiar with, or anything that's coming from like a pagan or animist tradition, they automatically will throw the label of satanic on it without actually recognizing that there's a discernment there to be had, and it's not just this white or black thing. That this knowledge is a tool that can be used either way. It's the willpower and the intention behind it that determines what is being done with it.
Right. And before we move on, just for the listeners who may not be familiar with the occult, I wanted to just kind of offer a few basic starting points that maybe you can look into, that are very easily accessible to you if you're interested in looking into it. Because let's, just like I said before, their knowledge is what's keeping us, at a lower, at a disadvantage, essentially. And so the only way to even the playing field is to be armed with the same weapons, so to speak, or knowledge that they are. So again, the occult is not inherently bad. It's all in how you use it, same as a gun. Gun could be used to save a life or take a life, depending on what your willpower is. So, for those interested in looking more into it, just to rattle a few names off, very easily accessible on YouTube. Listen to some lectures from, say, Manly P. Hall. Mark Passio does a really great presentation called Demystifying the Occult, and he just sort of briefly touches on all the major traditions in there. Let's see, Sethicus Boza at the channel Black Earth Productions. And granted, it's very in depth. It may be a little too heavy for beginners, but hey, if you're that type of person that likes to just go right in, that's a resource there. Can you maybe Michael Tessarion or Jordan Maxwell? Just to get you started. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, there's so much, and this is the thing with this knowledge. When you take the action in the universe, like, you're going to get the response. So when you start actively seeking this knowledge, you're going to start noticing these resources, these people, these connections start showing up in your reality field that are going to just help lead you one step at a time deeper and deeper into it. The next thing that we really wanted to, hit on here is, kind of making sure that we look at some solutions for, you know, how to get out of this mindset, how to not view everything from this negative or this poisoned worldview that everything's all doom and gloom. And the first one, you know, that, you know, we've talked about obviously here is knowledge. You know, not only under looking into that occult knowledge, and that includes the knowledge of the microcosm, what is going on within yourself and your own psychology, knowing thyself, but also the macrocosm and understanding the universal laws, the larger dynamics in play, and that through the law of correspondence, you can see how these are reflections of each other. So it starts with knowing thyself, you know, learning, you know, getting into astrology, you know, and the runes. Like, start learning your own system mechanics and how you operate as an individual, because you need to have that basis. If you don't understand how you operate psychologically, you know, not only just as a person in general, but as an individual, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And people who do have that knowledge are then going to be able to manipulate you. So it starts with coming back to knowing thyself.
Right. Which reminds me, another resource, you know, I can offer is check out the Kabbalion. It's a, you know, really great book. There's audiobooks on YouTube. You can listen to it, you know. Just those, you know, there's a lot more to natural law, but those Hermetic principles are very fundamental knowledge, you know, and once you start unlocking that, you will really start seeing them in effect all over the place, all around you at all times. And, you know, just that is such a magical discovery process, you know.
And then, you know, more of the solution. So, you know, it's starting with knowing thyself, but then also, you know, for me, stepping, you know, definitely out of the like Abrahamic traditions or the Gnostic mindset or things like this, and going more into the animist and pagan polytheistic mindset, we start seeing that, you know, getting out of where you're looking at everything in, as we talked about in a previous talk, everything in this black and white, you know, perspective. And that's, again, not to say that black and white do not exist, but there's also gray. Like, if there are two extremes of a pole, guess what has to exist in between though? Different gradients and mixtures of those, you know. So getting out of that black and white mindset, or that need to have a knee-jerk reaction to go into an absolutist statement and things, is very helpful for being able to step yourself out of one of these, you know, polarized views that are keeping you imbalanced. So being able to look at both extremes and then look and find the balance, you know, in between there, being able to see the nuance and understand things from a holistic viewpoint, I'd say be the next really big step, you know.
Right. And I would add as well, to shed the fear. You have to shed the fear. You've got to get out of that. You know, again, be informed, take action, you know, eat cleaner food, like do what you can to lessen the effects of what is being done to us on a mass scale, but get out of that fear of just like, you know, and even like, I still struggle with this every time I see a police officer, even if I'm not doing anything wrong. I get really uncomfortable, especially if, say, like, you know, a few years back when I would drive around and I'd have like a little bit of herb with me or something like that, you know, I shouldn't feel fear for having a medicinal plant on me. And yet, you know, it's the programming, you know. These are people that carry guns around, and they're known to be emotionally unstable and trigger happy. Like, it is a rational fear to some degree, but the more that you become empowered, and the more that you're embracing this this lifestyle, this mentality that we promote so often here of being that spiritual warrior, the first thing that, you know, especially if you're looking at the ancient world and the way that they train their warriors, that's the first thing they do, is they exaggerate the fears to such a point that you lose it, right? So if you're if you're really afraid of heights, you go skydiving, and then you're not afraid of heights anymore. Like, you have to shed that. Right. Because like I said before, the entire control system runs on fear. So as soon as you have eliminated that, they don't have that leverage on you to control you anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to get out of that victimhood mindset. That's, you know, obviously one of our major themes here at the Wizard Factory is getting out of the victimhood mentality, because it is a mind killer. And again, you know, this ties into the solution is being able to step into being a place of being empowered, inspired, and encouraged, which is why we use that as our our little tagline. And if you don't understand what we mean by that, we have an episode called that specifically that you can go back and check on, and we relate that to the trivium method and what we really mean by that.
And this can relate right into our next point here of like how the fear is being used to control us, and how shedding your fear makes you sort of immune to their manipulations. Is that the single greatest physical threat to humanity ever known throughout history and to this day is statism and death by government. And the reason that it still exists is because most people believe that it's a necessary evil, because people are either too dumb, too evil, too scary and ill-intentioned to be trusted with freedom. Therefore, we need to put people who can't be trusted into power over the rest of us. That makes no sense. And again, it's feeding on your fear of your neighbors, in wanting you're so scared of what they're going to vote you into, that you're going to vote first and impose your will on them instead, just because they live a lifestyle that you don't agree with, even though they're not hurting a fucking soul.
Right.
That's the little mini-me psychopathic mindset that they've kind of installed in us from day one.
Well, and for me, that that goes back to, obviously, statism at its root is built off of this doom and gloom mindset that people are evil, or people kind of like the Christian mindset that original sin, so you need Jesus or the Lord to save you. Well, with statism, you just need government to save you. But what it all comes back to is the belief that you as an individual are empowered enough to take care of yourself.
That you need a protector, fatherly protector person to preside over you.
Right. And again, this, for me, people that are falling into that, the reason they're afraid of their neighbor, that's just their projection. What they're really afraid of is their self, because they don't know thyself. So then they take that, oh, well, I have these issues, or I have these thoughts, so everybody else must be like that as well, so they can't be trusted. It's all people who don't trust themselves. When you step into a place of knowing thyself, being empowered, you recognize not only do you have that ability to do that, but other people do as well. So staying in a place of fear of them all the time, of what they might do, and then advocating for something like statism, that's really a disempowered mindset. It's a very doom and gloom mindset to think that, human beings are so, animalistic or uncontrollable that we literally have to put a small group of us in charge to control the rest of us, and to violently punish us if we do something that the group doesn't, deem correct.
Right. Totally. And, another way we can see this sort of doom and gloom mindset, and another sort of black and white absolutist way of thinking, is looking at technology and thinking that it's all out to get you. It's all about, big brother spying on you, and they're tracking you and listening to your phone calls and all this kind of stuff. But again, it's like how we said, we're forgetting all the good in the world, forgetting all the amazing ways that technology actually improves our life as well. And it's a two-edged sword, and it's largely can be up to you and how you use it in your own personal life. I personally, use technology for all sorts of awesome things, recording music in more sophisticated ways, hell, cryptocurrency, man, that's a prime example of how that can go either way, because that could very easily become the New World Order currency, that digital global currency that they've been talking about, if that the world adopts a centralized banker coin like XRP, for example. Or it could not only be something that solves the banking issue, the fiat currency problem, but blockchain itself could actually make the government obsolete if applied correctly. This is just a possibility. It's just a potential. I'm not talking about it. It's not a savior complex where crypto's going to save us or whatever. It's not like that. But just like any tool, like you said yourself, tools are just potential power. And the more potential power, the more that it can actually create change in the world based on your intentions and how you wield it. So, and again, we'll be getting more into cryptocurrencies very soon as sort of like a facet of the holistic empowerment and sovereignty mindset that we're trying to cultivate and promote here with the Wizard Effect. So, you know, definitely be looking out for that, but, you know, not to get too into that, for
Right.
example. But yeah, Brian, you want to touch on the technology thing then?
Yeah, you know, so, and this was something that, you know, I myself at one point struggled with. You know, I grew up as a country kid, so I didn't have a computer or the internet growing up or anything like that. And I was always kind of very hesitant of, you know, technology. I was like, oh, that's something I'm not really interested. I just want to go live off in the woods by myself. And, you know, I went and did that, tried that and had that experience, and it was great. But then I also started, you know, actually getting, you know, access to the internet for the first time in my life. And I mean, the amount of information that I was just exposed to, that I just became totally obsessed with it. And it has been probably the single greatest tool in my journey for being able to reach out to make connections and things like that. If it wasn't for technology, we would have never probably connected, you know. So I mean, so many
wonderful podcasts right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a very useful tool. So to like look at it from this only doom and gloom perspective of, you know, or it's all just going to be developed in, you know, it's going to become like Terminator. That's a very kind of fear-based mindset, you know, not to say that that isn't a potential or a possibility if those tools are misused. Again, we're not taking like an absolutist stance on things. We're recognizing that things have the potential for both, and it's up to us to be able to use it, you know. And the next thing I wanted to hit on here is, you know, getting back into this doom and gloom mindset of, you know, and this can tie back more to conspiracies. Well, you know, and you may, if you're in kind of the freedom or the anarchist community, you may see this a lot or experienced it, you know, yourself. But where you see like all these evil stories out there, you know, the stories about pedophilia or the stories about, you know, animal cruelty or, you know, whatever, you know, horrible things are going on. But then you'll see, you know, some people kind of get stuck to where that's the only thing they'll share, you know, like, and we've talked about this before, go through and kind of review your timeline and see what song you're putting out there. Look at what you're putting out there. If you're only focusing on those things, maybe step back and consider that you're unconsciously trying to share all these evil stories as a way of giving your, reflecting back to yourself that confirmation bias that you're looking for to confirm that negative worldview that you do have, you know. So recognize that, are you out there seeking and looking for information and ignoring the other things so you can give yourself a confirmation bias and can confirm your poisoned worldview, you know. And that works on the flip side as well with, like, you know, the new age and staying in the love and light. If you're only looking and focusing on that and you're ignoring everything else, you know, you're both of them, you're doing a disservice to yourself, you know, and to other people around you.
Right, because it's going to catch up to you eventually at some point. The more you ignore something, it's eventually going to, you know, be kicking down your door whether you like it or not.
Right,
that's
absolutely.
How it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we can kind of look at this this theme here in a way, like as we mentioned before with the bullies on the playground. This conspiracy mindset specifically is sort of getting so hung up on the what is rather than what could be, you know, that untapped potential of, remember that you are a creator with a lot of power that can, you know, do great things and enact change in the world. And where is your focus? That's what you should be asking yourself. That's what I ask myself on a daily basis, is what am I giving my energy and my attention to more so? You know, again, be holistic, look at the negative, be aware of what's going on in the world, but where are you really focusing your energy mostly on, and specifically in what creative ways, in an outlet sort of way.
Yeah, and another big one that we wanted to look at here is hierarchy. You know, the idea, and we see this a lot in the anarchist community, that they'll kind of look at any kind of hierarchy as just totally evil or from this kind of doom and gloom mindset. When we can look at, you know, nature does have hierarchy in it. Now, we're not saying that everybody should be controlled or everything. You know, if you're having that knee-jerk reaction and you're being emotionally triggered because you think that's what we're saying, we're not. Step back and listen. You know, what we're saying, though, is that, you know, an example would be, say you wanted to build a house and there was someone that has, you know, 40 years of building experience. You know, they know what they're doing. And then there's another group of people there that don't really know. Well, yeah, you know, if you didn't want hierarchy, you could go through that and you could try through trial and error, learn all those mistakes and try to build that house yourself. Or you could also find someone that has that experience, that knowledge, and put them in charge. And yes, they would delegate tasks. They would be the ones in charge of that project, but that not to the point that they're obviously like enslaving anybody. It's a
Right.
voluntary hierarchy is what it comes back down to. There's, free will and sovereignty are being honored. But to take the stance that all hierarchy is inherently evil, I think is kind of an absolutist, black and white kind of thinking that people can get stuck in.
Matter of fact, yeah, you can specifically you see communist sort of those type of mentality people are the ones that have the biggest hang-ups with hierarchies. And what do they have? A sense of entitlement, because they have boundaries issues and they don't know where their lines end. And so they think that because somebody took their 40 years, like you said, of house building experience and gathered the resources to build this house, which costs money, costs other resources to acquire this, just because you put some labor into it, that you're entitled to partial ownership of that, or that you get to, be on an equal plane with the person who's offering that as well, in terms of this concept of authority and who has the final say. In other words, if no one's forcing you, you can get some money for your labor and be a part of this project. But guess what? If you don't like it, or you don't like the way they're building the house and you think you can do it better, get your own wood and learn the craft yourself and do it yourself, right? If you think you can do better. But there's no sovereignty violations in that whatsoever. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah. And the next big one that we wanted to hit on here was astrology. And there's a few things I can get on here, so I'll probably be long-winded, so forgive me ahead of time. But,
take it away, bro.
With astrology, a lot of times people will take kind of just a doom and gloom stance on it in general. For example, a big one that we see is, a lot of people, whenever, and it's retrograde right now, whenever Mercury goes retrograde, people start like freaking out or blaming everything on it. And it's just, such an oversimplified understanding of astrology. First off, Mercury retrograde's not going to have the effect on every single person the same. If you want to understand how it's going to affect you, you need to see, first off, where is it in your natal chart? Where is it in your birth chart for you? See which sign it falls into, which house it falls into, which nakshatra, which pada. All of those are going to add a layer of depth and understanding to it, And then again, you could even take that further and look at like which dasha and mahadasha and, different time periods that we have in Vedic astrologies, which, what planet is being activated there. So, if you're in your like Mercury Mahadasha or something, Mercury retrograde might affect you really seriously. It might have some kind of strong effect in a certain area of your life, but it's also not going to just totally fuck up everything. Like everybody has their Mercury, it falls into a certain sign in a certain house in their chart. So it's going to affect that area of their life. It's not just going to like, whereas everybody just makes like kind of a general statement of, oh, this messed up, so it must have been Mercury retrograde. That's something. Or, another planet that we see a lot of people will take a doom and gloom perspective on is with Saturn, because Saturn's that big, heavy planet that puts pressure on you and it teaches you the hard lessons about cosmic law. So a lot of people will then be like, oh, Saturn is going retrograde, or or whatever it may be, or I have Saturn in this position in my chart, so I'm always going to have a problem. Go ahead.
So let's not forget that, tying it back to the whole conspiracy thing of this thing is like, the Saturn cults, all the Saturnalian symbolism with the judges that wear black, and then the black cube of Mecca and all this kind of stuff is like, again, it's similar to the whole occult thing to begin with. Is it's being used for negative purposes doesn't mean that Saturn is necessarily an evil planet or something like that. It's just it's the cosmic judge. It's the laws of nature that are, it's sort of that Kali dynamic where Kali, or Mother Hela in the Norse tradition, isn't inherently good or bad. She can, Hela can appear as a beautiful woman or as a corpse, as a reflection of you. So
Right.
that would be a projection where you're just seeing Saturn as this negative thing, is because you're not in alignment with natural law, and it's putting that thumb on you and squishing you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, and, there's a lot of different, placements where, people like with astrology, they'll make an oversimplified thing, and they'll look at just one sign or one planet, and then they'll just start, extrapolating their whole life off of that. And in astrology, you should never, ever judge a chart based off of just one aspect. If there's anything I've learned as an astrologer, if there's a challenge or something difficult in the chart, there's always a solution there as well. And many times those are the same thing. For example, I've talked about it, my moon is in the eighth house, in the sign of Libra. So I may feel a lot of those eighth house energies, and for those aren't familiar, the eighth house in astrology deals with, death and rebirth, sudden changes. It deals with secrets, the gutter of society, all the hidden stuff, the hidden trauma. It deals with alchemy, mysticism, astrology, all these different things. But a lot of people, a lot of times, would have a kind of if they just saw the moon was in the eighth house, they'd be like, oh, you must have experienced a lot of like emotional trauma and ups and downs in your life. And yeah, that's something that's true. A lot of times my mind does go really dark, or I may experience some really heavy ups and downs. But at the same time, as I was talking about before, there's a lot of charge with those. So if I just wanted to take a victimhood mindset and just sit back like this is happening to me and there's nothing I can do about it, yeah, I could see that from a doom and gloom perspective. But if I want to take it from the empowered mindset and recognize that, yes, this is a challenge that I chose for myself, because it's going to give me certain experiences. And now I can choose to be empowered, inspired, and encouraged, and to act with that, to use that energy and that charge in the most efficient way possible. And another big lesson that I've learned through astrology, and especially over the last years, I've been working more with Venus, and Venus happens to be my Dharma Devata planet, which is, my planet that helps me with my unconscious mind, helps me walk my Dharma, stay on my path, and the representation of Venus in the Norse tradition is Freya. So some of the things I've been learning from this is that, in astrology, there are certain houses, there are certain signs, positions, nakshatras, that deal with things like wealth and material pleasure and, all these different, physical things, these earthly things. And to me, it made me really realize and get out of that mindset of, like, we're talking about the doom and gloom mindset, where I'm thinking like all movies are evil, or if you're going after material pleasures, it's not spiritual, or if you're wanting to bring in abundance and have money, somehow that's unspiritual. Well, when I recognize and look at astrology that, a planet, there's entire planets, there's houses and signs that deal with these things, to accept that mindset would be to like say that those are inherently evil themselves. That's denying not only a part of your existence, but of the universe, and saying that, oh, this, that's the material realm, or that deals with wealth or money or pleasure, so that must be unspiritual.
Mm-hmm.
That's denying entire parts of the chart of the solar system and of yourself. Because remember, all of these things that are without are also within you. There's a correlation between those two with the law of correspondence. So recognizing that, Venus very much, deals with having the pleasure, enjoying things in life of this physical reality field. And that in some people's charts, it might be a lot more prominent than in others. Like, for example, like my Venus, sits in Sagittarius in my ninth house. So for me, what brings me joy and pleasure is digging into the esoteric matters and things like that, and traveling and doing those ninth house matters. But if other people, they might have, their Venus in, their first house or their second house, where it's going to, and it might be like, say, their Venus falls in the sign of Taurus or something. That's very much going to give them a disposition to where they're going to want to enjoy the good things in life. They're going to want to enjoy the fine food and the wealth and the entertainment and the good clothes and all the beautiful things, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because if I was to take that mindset or that stance when I'm looking at someone's chart, I would be having to look and say that, like, oh, well, you enjoying wealth, that must mean, you're inherently evil. And what it would actually make people do is kind of like hate parts of themselves. Because then if they're coming from the mindset that, oh, to be spiritual, I have to be this minimalist, or I can't go after things that give me wealth or pleasure, or that's all mind control, but this is something that's in my chart, they would take it as, oh, well, I must have bad karma, or that's a lesson I'm supposed to be learning. rather than looking at it from an empowered mindset that it's totally okay and just as spiritual to have that experience and it's something to be embraced. Like I know, Logan, when I first did your consultation, there were some things like that came up in your chart. You have some very strong Venus energy, and as well as your 11th house has a lot of things going on with it. So that would have, if I would have like came at it from that perspective as an astrologer, that would have kind of made you feel guilty about parts of yourself, rather than, coming at it the way I did, where it's like, this is just part of who you are, and it's totally okay. And it's just as spiritual as someone who's spending all their time in the ashram, or, going, seeking, that deep, dark occult knowledge. There's both of them are spiritual experiences, and one isn't better than the other.
Right. Wow, man, very well said. And
Thank you.
I think the whole point of this is to say that everybody should hit up Brian for a astrology because the man knows his shit, right? So yeah, absolutely. I definitely intend on learning the science myself, and then we will both be available to give those consultations. Currently, Brian is the one doing that right now. We can both give room readings and the personal adaptive coaching consultations, where I'm sort of picking up the slack where with the astrology side of things, where I'm doing more of the coaching. In fact, I just got my first testimonial, which is turned out really nice. So and we offer all three of those in a bundle for a discounted price. You're practically getting the third service for free if you purchase our reflections package. So if you're ready to get that one-on-one personalized instruction and initiation, and sort of like learning more about yourself and the energies that you're working with, and sort of
ritual design specific rituals for you
that personally catered to what your specific energetic needs are, it's invaluable, and again, we use these sciences on a daily basis ourselves as well. For those who haven't checked out yet, our initiation package, it's a totally free download that includes the Toolbox video series, which is again teaching you more invaluable knowledge about invoking the runes, about casting your circle of protection, and your pure space for doing ritual, and some breath work techniques and things like that. By all means, please check that out. The link is below for the initiation package. And the Phoenix package is also now available, which sort of takes on some of those fundamentals, but goes much more in depth, and is certainly not for the faint of heart. This is for the the people that are ready to just like really get serious and shake things up and bring about massive change very quickly.
And it's and that one's only $20. So if you're not wanting to get into some of the more in depth or in serious services, that's a great place to start off of. And in that we have different practices that it's specific. That package is specifically designed to invoke radical transformation in your life. So I teach an advanced way of casting the circle, the magi, that's built off of what we taught in the free initiation package. And then we also get into a certain spell that I teach that, is really it's kind of like calling in a mini Ragnarok, or, an alchemical transformation on yourself. So very useful spell. And then as well as some breath work and other meditative techniques that are used to kind of change your karmic and energetic ties with the past and things. So, very useful package, and also very affordable.
Right. And again, that's called the Phoenix package for a very good reason. What is the Phoenix? But it bursts into flames. Like, shit's going to get hot first, but then from those ashes, you'll be reborn anew. So
exactly.
And I think that's going to wrap us up this evening. I think, this was a really good talk. I really like a lot of the material that we covered. So again, if you appreciate this content, if you found it useful or valuable, please help our channel to continue to grow by liking the video, subscribing, and clicking the notification bell so that you can see when we are uploading new content every single week consistently. And thank you guys for watching. You mean the world to us. We love you so very much. And until next week, please be empowered, inspired, and encouraged.